Hi, community. What if the biggest barrier between you and your dream vacation wasn't the destination? It was the information you had about access. Today's guest believes that travel isn't a privilege reserved for the few. It's a right that belongs to everyone. And she's built her whole entire business around proving that. Jamie is the owner of Adventures by Jamie, a travel advisory practice on a mission to make the world more accessible, one trip at a time. And I have to tell you from personal experience, if I had known Jamie and had spoken to her before I had taken some of my family vacations, they would have saved a great deal of heartache on some of our trips. We're going to be talking about why working with a travel advisor, especially when accessibility is a part of the equation, isn't just helpful, it can be the difference between a dream trip and a disaster. We'll unpack which types of travel are leading the charge when it comes to inclusion, and honestly, some of her answers might surprise you. But here's the part I think every tourism board and destination organization needs to hear. Because Jamie is going to pull back the curtain on why accessibility isn't just the right thing to do, it's smart business. And sometimes the changes that make the biggest difference are the smallest ones. Whether you're a traveler who's been told that destinations just isn't for you, a hospitality professional wondering where to start, or someone who just loves to explore this beautiful world, this episode is for you. So sit back and get comfortable and get ready to rethink what's possible. Welcome to the show. Let's get into it. Our full name today, our guest is Jamie Santillo, and she is the founder of Adventures by Jamie. And did I say that right?
You did. Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. And you have a travel agency that was created for individuals with disabilities and their families.
Correct.
And it's more than that, right?
It absolutely is. I mean, Adventures by JB is meant to help everybody see the world, but in addition to planning travel, it's also about advocating for change in the travel industry, making different locations more inclusive, partnering with different organizations to open their eyes to what they might not really be paying attention to.
That's awesome. So give us a broad view of who Jamie Santillo is.
Yeah, so I know you really can't see in the video, but I am a full-time power wheelchair user. I was born with congenital muscular dystrophy. And so for me, life has always just looked different. I've had to think outside of the box and how to do things. And that certainly extended into travel. My family and I traveled extensively as, a child. Um, and, but that looked very different when I was, 5, 10 years old, and they could easily pick me up and carry me and all of that. As I grew into adulthood, that looked very different. And then obviously, when I moved out from living home with mom and dad and I was traveling on my own, now I cannot travel on my own fully, but traveling as an adult, making my own plans, it became very apparent that there needed to be a lot of change in the industry because it just wasn't there. And
Yeah.
so, but I've always felt like, I might not be able to do things the, we'll just say quote unquote normal way, but there's always a way. And I look at that when I am planning travel for myself and for my clients. How can we make this possible for you?
I love that. So, was there a defining moment in your travels that made you decide to start Adventures by Jamie?
Well, I sort of just touched on the fact that, you know, there's not really many resources out there. Um, Especially years ago when I, prior to my getting into this and all of that, but there just isn't a lot of content there. Something will say it's a wheelchair accessible hotel room, but it lacks the detail. The pictures are the same pictures of every other hotel room, you know. Um, it's not telling me the bed height. It's not telling me, is it a roll-in shower? And if it is a roll-in shower, where is the handheld sprayer next to you? Is it across, on the far wall from where you're actually seated? What does this look like? It's not there, you know. And so I had looked to use travel agencies prior to help in booking travel and answer my questions, but I was never able to find somebody that specialized in this. I always kept hitting a wall of, well, I'm not sure, I'll look into it. But them also not knowing the questions to ask, I would be educating them on, well, I need you to ask X, Y, and Z to make sure that I have what I need, because you just seeing, well, it says it's wheelchair accessible, doesn't mean it's going to work for me, So there was just this void in the industry that I thought, well, maybe I can try to help fill.
So you literally led me into this next question. For the people who are listening right now who have never heard of accessible travel, like what does that look like fully? And I know
So
you've mentioned some things, but like, this might be a completely new idea for people. Like, wow, there is actually traveling agencies, spaces that ensure that our travel is fully accessible. And you made some details about the hotel, but what does it look like to think of travel fully in accessible measures?
exactly. So it is so important to work with your client to find out what their needs are. Now, and just for clarification, we cater to all disabilities, not just mobility challenges, but if somebody has a hearing impairment, a vision impairment, if they're on the spectrum, if they have dietary needs, we're not just talking about individuals like myself. But it is imperative that you have deep conversation with your clients to know what their specific needs are. So, using myself as an example, if I'm talking to another wheelchair user, guess what? We have different needs. We are not a one size fits all demographic, and so, okay, well, this is how I transfer. How do you transfer? Um, I don't transfer. I don't weight bear at all. I don't use a Hoyer lift. I don't use a sliding board. I use my 6'4" fiance who lifts me. So how do you do it? What does that look like for you? Um, are you going to be driving? Like, do you need hand controls if you're going to rent a vehicle? If you're not renting a vehicle, do you have to stay in your wheelchair? If you're going into an amusement park, are you able to transfer by yourself to get onto a ride or no? I would much rather send you to a theme park that there are more attractions that you can remain in your wheelchair to experience versus other that don't have any, you know? So we really hone in on what are your needs. If I've helped clients that have very strict dietary needs, and finding out what type of menu items the hotel restaurants offer or the cruise ships offer, how they can accommodate their dietary needs. Can they provide a refrigerator in their cabin? Because yes, they all have like coolers, as they call them on cruise ships, but they might actually need a true refrigerator. And so, in that case, because maybe they are a diabetic and they have insulin that has kept cold. So, making sure that I have all of their needs met because my goal, any travel advisor that's on this, should be that no matter where I'm sending you, you don't have about it, just like you don't think about it at home, right? At home, all of your needs are met. Same thing should apply here.
Good. So, what are common like fears or misconceptions that individuals with disabilities have about travel that you, as a travel agent, can kind of pave the way for them to be able to have the experiences that they're looking for?
That for one, that locations are not going to be accessible. Flying is a big one. Is my wheelchair going to be safe with flying? I mean, I unfortunately can't, guarantee that, but I can certainly help in advising how best to protect your wheelchair if you're flying with a chair. But so is the location accessible, the flying? Um, if they have to rent any type of medical equipment, is that available? Sometimes it's difficult to find rentable equipment that is like what they have at home. So can we rent something? With transportation going to look like when we're there? So yes, it is definitely not from the travel advisor perspective. It is not as simple as booking for somebody without special needs, but it's very doable. I think that every travel advisor should be educated and certified in being special needs certified because you never know who's going to be on the other end of that phone. It doesn't have to be that they have a quote unquote disability, but you may have an elderly, you know, gentleman that now cannot get around like he used to. And how are you going to help accommodate him? You might have to rent a scooter, or maybe they need oxygen. You just don't know, So I
Right.
would much
Yeah.
rather be equipped to help versus have to turn them away.
So, what are the most accessible ways of travel, like with international travel and cruises and resorts and things like that? What would you say is the most accessible spaces to be in?
I would say probably top of my list is cruising. Um, I have been on several cruises, and everything about the ship has just blown my. I have done extensive cruising with Royal Caribbean, with Disney, with Celebrity. Um, every single ship that I've been on, all of my needs were met. I was always very surprised of how much just through the cruise line that you can request. They have shower chairs that roll, like roll over the toilet, roll into the shower. Not just a stand, a Rubbermaid stool that you could
Right.
buy at Walmart. They actually have those sorts of things. They have bed wedges. I've had clients that cannot sleep flat, and they have bed wedges that you can raise the bed on one end so they're not laying flat. They have the refrigerators that you can put in, and so on and so forth. I was 45 the first time I went on a Disney cruise, and I saw, just going around taking photos and videos. for content for my travel agency, the Aqua Mouse, which is the water slide. And I saw the handicapped like wheelchair symbol. And I thought, well, that's odd. What's that for? You know? And so I asked one of the members, this can't be for the water slide, right? And they said, no, it is. Here, come with us. And they took me around to have a specialty lift that would bring a person in a wheelchair up to the loading area of the attraction. And typically it's what they call an omni mover. So it's just one raft after another. People hop on and hop off. It never stops. Well, that wouldn't work for me, of course. So for somebody, they stop the ride and allow you to take as much time as you need. They asked if I transferred by myself, which I told them no. But they showed me that they have something, it looked like steps. And for somebody that can transfer, they could scoot themselves down from the level of their wheelchair down these steps to the level of where the raft is to get on and off. Another thing that I really liked about this raft is it's a two-person raft with a circle in the front, a circle in the back connected, but each circle had a backrest on it. And for me, who doesn't have a lot of upper body strength, that was huge. So I had Kevin fiance lift into the front tube, the front inner tube. He sat in the back, and again, he's 6'4". So I told him, wrap your long legs around me to hopefully, keep me a little bit more secure because, again, I'm 45 and I've never been able to be on a water slide before. And so they asked me, we will allow you to go twice if you want because it takes longer to get on and off. Yeah. And I said, well, this is the first time I've ever done this. So let's see how once goes. And I'll let you know on the way back. And it was amazing. So we did do it again. But the fact that Disney Cruise Line had the, foresight to have this, option for people with disabilities blew my mind. And I love also with Royal Caribbean, they have a very robust deaf and hard of hearing program, as well as an autism program. I mean, yeah, cruising to me is the best. Now, I will say that the excursions can be a little tricky because you're going into another country. They don't have the ADA like we do. And you may see, if you're booking an excursion through the cruise line and not from an independent company, you may see one that says it's wheelchair accessible. But the problem with those is they're open to anybody, not just people with disabilities. So if you don't book the accessible excursion early and you need an accessible excursion, you're going to be out of luck and have to look outside of booking through the cruise line itself. But oftentimes the ports are very accessible just to roll around and see what's in the area. Now, another thing to keep an eye out on are the ports that you have to get onto a tender boat, because they don't always allow wheelchair users to get off at those ports. Depending on like how the tide is that day and how choppy the water is that day, they don't want anybody falling off the side of the ramp, between boats. So I always try for myself, for my clients, to find ports that it is not using a tender. But I have done it once or twice, and I've been very lucky to be able to offboard, and use the tender, but that's not always the case.
Yeah. And it probably, I don't know, doesn't feel safe when, you're in a boat compared to a different mode of
Right,
transportation.
right, right.
Yeah.
Um, I would also say theme parks, specifically Disney, is very, very inclusive. Disney has the most attractions that you can stay in your wheelchair to enjoy. So that's really, really nice. They have made it a bit difficult with their disability service pack, but even without that, I still would say that Disney um, far beats their competitors on accessibility.
You cut out when you said their disability. Did you say disability packs?
Pass, PASS.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
So, wow. So they used to have a disability pass and they don't have one anymore.
Well, they have one, but it used to, encompass pretty much any disability, mobility, those on the spectrum. Now it is only for those on the spectrum and neurodivergent. And the reason being is that able bodied visitors got wind of, if I put somebody in a wheelchair, I could get the disability pass for my group, and we can go in the lightning lane and take advantage of this. We don't have to buy the lightning lane. And there were actually people out there advertising online for a person with a disability to join them at Disney. They would pay for them to
Oh
join
my
them at Disney
goodness.
to be able to use the pass. And now I don't fault Disney for cracking down on who is eligible for this. However, I do think that there are people with mobility issues that still need and really benefit from, you know, from what you get from the past. I think they took it a little too far. So I'm hoping that those reins will loosen a bit, but I do understand why they did it.
So if you're a wheelchair user and you go to Disney, what does that look like then that makes it accessible? Like as far as the
So,
rides and
I mean, the rides themselves don't change. I mean, they still have the most rides that you can remain in your wheelchair to ride. You can go to a cast member at the front of the line, tell them that you applied for the DAS. It's DAS, so Disability Assisted Service Pass, but everybody says the DAS Pass. So you applied for it, you were denied. They told me to come and talk to you. And a lot of times they will either give you a call back, and that's primarily what the DAS Pass does. It gives you a callback time to come to the attraction and go through the lightning lane. So they will typically either give you a callback time to come and do that, or they will just let you go into the lightning lane right then and there. So, but you're, instead of just being able to go into the lightning lane and do it, you have to talk to somebody at every attraction if you do that. If not, you just go through the standby line and wait like everybody else does, you know? Um, so, but if you have a very, let's just say you have a very involved child, and waiting in a traditional line. Now, you're going to wait in line either way. One's just a bit expedited over the other, you know? So, um, depending on your needs, you know, you have to make the decision of, is this doable for my family? Um, you know, for families, somebody on the spectrum, Disney is great at having like quiet areas and everything to not have, because let's be honest, Disney theme parks period have a lot of stimulation. You know, sights, smell, you know, smells, sounds, all of that. So they're really good about having quiet areas. They're good about dietary restrictions. You know, they really do well. All of their public transportation, like if you go to Disney World, you have the bus, the boat, the Skyliner, and the monorail. All of those are wheelchair accessible. Stay in your wheelchair. Their hotel rooms, the accessible rooms, are some of the most accessible I've ever been in. And, you know, they really do a great job.
So, your travel agency got voted 3 times best in Florida for travel
We
agencies,
did.
which is amazing. So tell us, as far as the Florida travel landscape looks like, what are spaces that you would recommend besides Disney?
Right. Besides do cruising, I would say Amelia Island is one of my favorites. Also, the Tampa Bay Clearwater area, they're wonderful. I live in the Tampa Bay area, so I'm a bit biased, but there is so much to do in Tampa Bay, and I have yet to find something that isn't accessible.
Mhm.
One of the things my fiance and I did was go glamping, which I thought there is no way in the world that me going camping of any kind is going to be accessible. And there is a glamping company in Tampa at the Hillsborough River State Park, and they have a few tents that they made wheelchair accessible.
Oh,
So
okay.
we were able to experience that, like in, you know, I say woods, I don't know, but you know, you're in a state park in the middle of nature in a tent in a wheelchair. Like that's crazy to me. Um, so that was amazing. I fly in Tampa. They have a disability program, so I was able to go indoor skydiving. Um, so I never thought that would happen either.
So
But
cool.
I love that so many of our cities around the state really are on board with making things more inclusive. You know, they're willing to listen, and it that just means so much.
Yeah. So good. So, and we've talked about the positive and how many spaces do have great things, but where do you see improvement at when it comes to travel for people with disabilities in the Florida, Tampa Bay area?
I think, you know, the Florida period is very beach heavy, of course, you know, and yes, there are Moby mats with a lot of beaches, or something similar. It might not be that brand, but everybody knows the name Moby mat. You know, so which that's wonderful. But how can we make our beaches, our boats, and things more accessible? It There's a lot of sightseeing tours, a lot of dolphin viewing tours, and all of that, and not a ton. Now, I have been on some, you know, but like I did a tour in Orlando, um, for it was a boat on a pontoon boat, and it was going to show you like houses of celebrities and all of this, right? And I called in advance and asked if it was wheelchair accessible. They said yes. And so when we got there, they looked at my wheelchair and they're like, and how heavy is your chair? And I said, well, it's 400 pounds without me in it. And power wheelchairs are very heavy. And they're like, oh, yeah, we can't lift that. And I said, well, I thought you said that it was wheelchair accessible. And they said, well, what we typically do is we will take a manual wheelchair, lift it onto the boat, and then, help the person into their chair, or sometimes we can lift the chair and the person. And I'm like, yeah, you're not lifting my chair. And so the way that my fiance and I just worked around that is, for me, I'm able to sit independently outside of my wheelchair. Not everybody that uses the wheelchair can do that. So he transferred me onto the boat. He put my wheelchair back in our vehicle and then came back to the boat with me. And we're still able to do it, but truly advertise correctly, I think we need to do better on. Um, Again, with beaches and everything, we need to do a bit better on that too. Um, and just again, paying attention to little things. I have been to areas where a sidewalk on one side of the road has a cutout ramp. You go across the crosswalk, and now there's a step on the other side. It's like, well, now where am I supposed to go? Now I get to play in traffic. What do we do here? So little things like that.
It can, I mean, little things, but that could definitely inhibit a moment of travel, right?
Absolutely.
So when you do travel spaces, what are some green flags that you're like, whoa, like this community gets it, like this space, gets ability really well? What are like green flags that you can just tell our listeners to be watching for?
Absolutely. So things like, having the cutouts on the sidewalks on both sides. That Having push buttons on doors. One of my biggest pet peeves is access to elevator buttons, or even the buttons, to open a door. Because places are notorious for putting a trash can, a planter, something underneath that button. I am fully capable of pushing a button, but not if you obstruct my ability to get close enough to it. And so I have said that to so many hotel managers, airport managers. I mean, I've said it to bank managers. And I don't fault anyone. People that don't have a mobility challenge, why would they think of that ever? They don't need to, you know? And so, but when I do bring it up to them, you visually can see the light bulb going off. And it's like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. We're going to take care of that. And I love that I have one particular hotel in mind that I have said that to. And I've stayed with them multiple times. And there's no trash can now under the elevator buttons. And I'm like, see? Because a lot of places think making change means money, means big dollar signs to be ADA compliant and everything, and not so much. But seeing the buttons being obstructed, having employees talk to the disabled person I can't tell you how many times I've been out to dinner. What would she like to drink? I would like a Coke, please. Or, what's her date of birth? I mean, it's just, and when I do speak, it's almost like, oh, what? It can talk. Yes, it can, and so just don't ever assume a person's abilities. We are people too. And I'm sure we're going to surprise you of how smart and articulate and funny and everything else that we are, So never, never assume that we don't have a voice.
You literally keep answering my questions inside of your answers. And so one of the things I was going to ask about is for people like for churches and small businesses and places like that feel like being accessible is a big item, like it's hard. What are like just you already mentioned making sure that there's not a trash can underneath the elevator, but what are some more like practical things that those spaces could do to just start thinking about are we being as inclusive as we can be?
As far as I would look at, and I know like this one might be harder, but you can't always, and I understand, have a true companion restroom. But that does get challenging. Like in my situation, I need help in the restroom. I can't transfer from my chair into the stall, and so my fiance is typically the one with me. And so either I'm going into a men's room or he's coming into a ladies' room. And if there's not a companion restroom there. So just having like the awareness of sometimes that may happen. Another thing that I have found very helpful is that people with disabilities have a hard time staying like with the restroom scenario, um, latching the doors or grabbing onto the small little knob that there might be to open and close the bathroom door, as far as the stall door, I mean, so installing an actual handle that somebody could grab and pull, that is very, very helpful. Not a lot of money to change that. Also, paper towels, oftentimes on the wall may be hard for a wheelchair user to reach. And so having, whether it's like something you have in your kitchen, like on a paper towel holder, or a stack of towels that paper towels that are in some sort of holder on the countertop. And then also, which I see in so many bathrooms, there are trash cans that have the pedal that you push to open the lid. Like, well, how am I supposed to open that? So not having trash cans like that too. So just little things make a huge difference.
Yeah. I think too in those scenarios, having a voice of disability there, having someone available to just kind of walk through with you, who is a wheelchair user or, um, you know, I think that that's probably also one of the easiest ways that they can clearly get the advice that they need is just to have a voice of disability there, So, but yeah, those are all. And I never thought about the trash can, like um, so, so if there is a family or someone who has been having this dream vacation, this dream trip that they wanted to go on, and they're listening, like how can they get a hold of you? And what advice would you give them as far as like getting connected and getting started on that dream?
Absolutely. Well, I would love to help anybody that's looking to go on an accessible vacation. You could reach out through our website, which is adventuresbyjamie.com. I spell Jamie Jamie. You can reach out through Facebook, through Instagram. All of that is, again, Adventures by Jamie. Email jamie@adventuresbyjamie.com, or call us 239-297-6691. So would love to help. I would say definitely the biggest thing with planning an accessible vacation is give yourself time, with hotels, with cruises, really with any type of trip. Accessible accommodation, they're not as plentiful as normal accommodations, right? So it's a very small percentage that is truly accessible, and they go quick. And so if you have this dream vacation mind, don't wait till the last minute. Reach out to us so we can give you the most options, that that you can find something that best fits your needs.
Very good. And I will have all your number and all your contact information in the links as a part of the podcast description. So all that'll be available for people. I am just so grateful that you were on here. We met because you came and visited our advocacy group, and you were sharing all the things that you did. I had shared with you then that we had gone on a big 50th birthday party for a cruise, and we brought my son, who's a wheelchair user, along, and we just ran into things that we didn't expect to have to run into. And so just meeting you and talking to you and just knowing that there are people available to help really just plan everything out and make sure that the party is smooth for everybody, that every individual has a great time it's important. And I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing. And so thank you for making accessible travel less intimidating and, ironing out the way for people to be able to get it done. So I'm grateful for what you're doing, and thank you for coming on and sharing that.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share it, and if ever I can help, I am happy to be here.
We'll call you before the next cruise.
There you go.
All right. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on Talking Inclusivity with the Hive. We hope the stories shared inspire and empower you. Remember, every voice matters, and every action can make a difference. If you haven't gotten the chance to listen to the About Us episode, a link will be provided in the show notes. Learn more about the Hive's journey for inclusive housing in Tampa. If what you hear resonates within you, join the movement. Hit subscribe and join our tribe. Let's continue to build a world where inclusion is the norm.